The season is finally upon us. We got Brad and Logan here today, and we're going to talk all about the Ole Miss and Furman game this weekend.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Thanks for tuning into the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. I'm your host, Steven Willis. He is Brad Logan from Believe in Ole Miss, that podcast, Logan Digital Media, and he also does Inside the Rebels. He's basically everywhere, I do believe, in North Mississippi covering sports. Brad, how are you doing, bud?
I'm just ready for kickoff. I mean, we've talked
Right.
about it and watched it and talked about it, and I'm just ready to kick it off, just like you and so many of your listeners and viewers. We'll talk about the game. I don't know, some people talk about, well, it's Furman. Well, that's right, but you're not going to see Furman. You're going to see Ole Miss, and we'll get into the reasons and what you should be looking for. So, the opponent's not much, but I do think people are really excited about seeing Ole Miss.
Yeah, and it's the debut of the number one rated transfer class, like Walter Nolan, Princely, and Monmielen. You're not going to get 30, 40 plays out of Monmielen, but you might get 10 to 15. Juice Wells, those players, because to be honest, if we're going to be real, Brad, we have not seen these players play. We haven't seen Ole Miss football since the Penn State game. I mean, if you want to talk about Ole Miss fans pent up, I mean, that is what this Ole Miss fan base is, to the point where I don't know if I'm 100% worried if you see the normal leave before halftime thing that Ole Miss fans do in these early type games. I don't know if that's going to happen in the same rate early on in the game. It might happen in the fourth quarter. I think it goes a little bit longer because it's a night game, and it's because of the pent up emotion of people waiting to see the game.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about tickets, and we'll get into the SEC games have sold out at Vaught-Hemingway, and also the very limited tickets for the non-conference game. So for everyone that got tickets, you're in good shape. But if you didn't get tickets, it's going to be secondary market for the premier games on campus. I think it'll be a little different this year. You talk about the schedule with Furman, Middle Tennessee before they head on the road to face Wake Forest. I think those first two games will be, honestly, interested to see what Ole Miss will do, sure, on offense, but I think on defense too. I mean, we're all ready to see what Chris Paul can do. Is Princely Monmielen going to be healthy? There's a tweet out today where he kind of quote tweeted a Instagram post by Walter Nolan, the talented transfer out of Texas A&M. He's excited about getting some game action. So, don't get me wrong. I mean, there are a lot of fans that are excited about the bent-up frustration and ready for the season, but no more than these coaches and players. We heard from Jaxson Dart on Monday, and he talked about how he's really tired of facing this Ole Miss defense because they're so, they're so good. And we heard from Pete Golding last week. We heard from Charlie Weiss Jr., and both of them were very complimentary of each of the offense and defense. But I think more than anything, this team's ready to go. They've heard it, they've read it, they've watched it. Now it's time to perform on the field, and I think they're ready.
Yeah, and I'm just ready for the ball. Just like you said, I'm ready for the ball to be kicked off. Whenever we do our pregame show on Saturday, and then after the game, when I do the instant overreaction thing as well, I mean, it's just going to be a fantastic deal. Like, I have already recorded, Brad, with Joe DeLeon, who is the resident FCS expert from the Believe Network, actually. And he's the person that I always go to for FCS opponents, because he is the FCS whisperer. So I know way too much about Furman at this point. I know way too much about that program.
Yeah, I think that will matter for the first maybe 5 or 10 minutes of the game. I expect Ole Miss to take the defense, or take the top off the defense early with Trey Harris. And, I've been on this show a lot over the summer, and I feel as strongly now as I do when I first came on that I think Caden Lee is going to be a difference maker for this offense. And I think, there were reports, and I won't go into any specifics about injury, But there are reports that there are a couple of, not season ending, but a couple of banged up wide receivers. That is true. I don't know if we'll see the entire wide receiving core. Obviously, we feel very good. I say we, the entire 24/7 sports team, feels good about Deion Smith being eligible. He is eligible with the exception of the NCAA. They're still waiting on the okay from the NCAA. From everything that we've been told is everything is good from an Ole Miss side of thing. You talk about admission into classes and that's what everything's good. It's just the NCAA is not given their stamp of approval, which is just incredibly frustrating, I know, on a number of levels. But other than that, I mean, you got a wide receiving core that's going to be incredible. And we'll see if Juice Wells, we'll see if Jordan Watkins, how much they play. They won't have to play. I don't expect to play a lot, but it's a great opportunity for a player like, if you remember this time last year, we were talking a ton about Aiden Williams being a stalwart in this offense. To be fair, this is a somewhat complicated offense, and it took Aiden Williams a little bit to kind of jump on. So this is a great opportunity for someone like Aiden Williams, which we think is going to play and have a contributing part of this offense. Then you start talking about Caden Lee. So the wide receiving room is definitely one that I think we'll be excited to see. But don't forget for a moment Caden Prescorn and Daquan Wright being huge components of this offense as well. That's just yet another arsenal that Jaxson Dart's going to have in his favor throwing the football. So that's definitely – there's going to be a lot we're looking for, okay? Everybody's going to have their eyes wide open on Saturday looking at specific parts of that offense and defense, and we'll get a nice look. Because here's the thing, Steven. In years past, we've had at least one or two scrimmages, in-game live scrimmages in Vaught-Hemingway Stadium the media's been able to see. We've seen nothing other than a couple of, periods to begin practice. It's just kind of a blank slate. I'm going into it just like everyone watching and listening tonight. I haven't seen very much either. So we're all excited for Saturday.
Deion Smith, I can't shake it. If he was at Alabama or at Michigan, he would already be playing.
Well, I mean, you said it. I mean, it's really frustrating. And I know a lot of other people are frustrating. The only saving grace is that Ole Miss doesn't open up with a Louisville like it did a couple of years ago. It doesn't open up with a Georgia Tech or someone of significance. It opens up with a couple of teams. And look, I'm not taking anything away from Furman or Middle Tennessee, but I think Ole Miss needs to get some finality on Deion Smith by Wake Forest. I do feel like Dave Clawson's going to have a really good team at Wake Forest. I think good is relative when you talk about the ACC, but once again, you go on the road, it's probably not going to be a hostile environment, but it's a road atmosphere. And I do think that's when Ole Miss has had its two games against Middle Tennessee and against Furman. It's going to need to have some things rectified with Deion Smith. I really thought it would happen at some point last week. Now, at this point, you're just guessing on when Ole Miss receives the call from the NCAA.
Yeah, I got a text message last night that was saying there was something about to be released on it. Pay attention to this. Something's about to happen. And again, nothing happened. Everybody's just kind of guessing. It's one of those filling in lack of news with news that happens all over this Ole Miss thing whenever it goes on, because Lane Kiffin doesn't talk about it. The program doesn't talk about it. The information has to come from somewhere. And sometimes just people are just guessing. They're trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, but once again, I can't say this enough. It's a great opportunity for Ole Miss to get some younger players in the game. Maybe we see a Norrell White. That's a player down in the Mississippi Gulf Coast, a highly decorated 4-star product out of Ocean Springs, played at St. Martin High School in Mississippi. So maybe it's an opportunity to see him. So I don't know. I mean, it's a situation where everyone would like to see Deion Smith sooner rather than later, just at the mercy of the NCAA.
Yeah, and just everybody that's in the chat, go ahead and please put your name and where you're writing from whenever you put it out there, so we can take care of your comment whenever it comes up. So, Brad, the running game is going to be key. Lane Kiffin talked about the running game. Jaxson Dart talked about the running game, and this is my theory on that. The defensive line for Furman is the best part of their team. If you want a look of an FCS team to kind of give you a look, you're going to let them know that you're coming. They know to expect the run game, and they're going to bow up and try to stop it. Now, if you are who you think you are, that's not going to matter. But this is a good way to find out if Ulysses Bentley is the dude, or Henry Parrish, or Rashad Amos, by just going up there mano-mano and running the football. Because if Ole Miss wanted to throw the football, they could score 100 points Saturday.
Yeah, we heard from J.J. Pegues on Monday when the media availability, and, he was very complimentary of the Ole Miss offensive line. I think that's going to be a huge component of this offense. You've got 2 transfers out of Washington, Julius Buello, along with Nate Kalepo. And then J.J. talked about going up against Nate Kalepo and how difficult he was to manage to get around and to maneuver. So those are 2 offensive linemen. There could be an issue at center with won't go into a ton of specifics about Caleb Warren. There could be a little bit of an injury there. Could be an issue to where you see Gerquan Scott. I've also heard that he's been wearing the black jersey a little bit. So could see Reese McIntyre start on Saturday. So definitely something to monitor. But, yeah, that offensive front, the good news is you do have any type of tweak of an ankle or a knee or anything that's not season debilitating. You've got 8, 9, 10 deep on that offensive line, and that is true depth. That's not just numbers. It's not just lip service saying Ole Miss is 3 deep in some positions. They literally are 3 deep in some positions. So I think that offensive line is going to be, interesting to watch. We've heard from JJ and other defensive players about how much they have appreciated Pete Golding. One, for example, the defensive coordinator has talked about how well that offensive line has performed during scrimmages and practice. So, Diego Pounds is someone I'm going to be watching, the transfer out of North Carolina. And then, of course, you've got other players, and Micah Pettis is coming off an injury. So there's so much depth across that defensive front. Is this an opportunity for someone like an Eli Acker? We haven't heard Eli's name mentioned very much. This is a situation where Eli's coming up under the end of his career at Ole Miss. Is he going to make a push to get more playing time than he got last year? So these early games are going to be able to cycle through for John Garrison and that offensive line to see the particular pieces that need to be in particular places, because so many of these offensive linemen can play different positions. Real quick, you talk about running back. Everything we've seen out of Ulysses Bentley, it's been about adding weight and adding about muscle. He has been someone that we talked to early in fall camp before practices really began, said he got roughly 20 pounds of muscle on. So not a huge back, but obviously a really good running back to transfer out of SNU. He's been in the system for a couple of years. And then Henry Parrish back. Who's going to be that running back one? Steven, I don't know that it really matters. If you've got a 3-headed monster of Parrish, then you've got Amos coming off the bench, the redshirt junior transfer that's more of a bruiser, and you've got Ulysses Bentley. You got those 3 running backs ready to go. Not to mention, Matt Jones has had a really good preseason camp. He's a running back out of the Jackson metro area. You're 4 deep, easy at the running back room, and that bodes well for Ole Miss.
All right, a couple of things before we let you go. Jaxson Dart's going to start his run. They were very complimentary of what Jaxson Dart has been in the preseason and how it appears he has taken another step. What do you think it looks like with a year 3 Jaxson Dart under center?
We talked to him. We've had a chance to visit with him with a number of media availabilities. And then, of course, at the very beginning of fall camp, the interesting part about Jaxson Dart is, by the way, he just gave, I believe, every member of the team specific Ole Miss Beats by Dre headphones, which was really cool. And to me, that just goes back to the camaraderie of the team. And Jackson even said on Monday in the press availability how this team has really come together. And I think, Steven, a lot of that is lip service. But judging by the videos that not the university, but the videos the individual players have put on social media about the basketball games inside the Manning Center and inside the player room, we've seen different activities that the players are doing together, and just seeing that and seeing the camaraderie lends that you think if you can build that camaraderie inside the locker room, it's going to show up on the field. And so many times last year, and I don't have to go into any specifics about how there could have been locker room issues with certain players. Could that happen? Sure, that could happen, I'm sure, at some point during the season. But right now, you could not ask for a better locker room for Ole Miss heading into the season. I think it starts with Jaxson Dart. It starts with the quarterback that's been in the system a couple of years. It starts with a guy that put the team on his shoulders with a really busted up ankle last year and really took the team forward. He's been on a number of Heisman watches. He's been on all types of power polls and quarterbacks in the SEC. At the end of the day, he's going to have to perform on the field. And a quarterback is only as good as his offensive line, as his wide receivers, and as his tight ends, and as his running backs will take them. And, Steven, he has never, nor has any Ole Miss fan ever seen a collection of players on the offensive side of the ball like they'll see this season in our lifetime and maybe dating back in the 1960s.
Yeah, the abundance of talent that is on Ole Miss's roster. Tomorrow's Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the actual podcast, it talks about basically how this year is the proof of concept year for Lane Kiffin's roster building. And if this can happen, or if they're going to continue to look at him like Bill Snyder from the early 2000s, recruiting all the JUCO players, that's kind of what they're doing. So that's kind of cool to see. Before we let you out of here, JJ Pegues as the number 38. I like it. I think he was the perfect person to get that number. I do, for whatever reason, wish that he wore it all the time, but it's going to be a weird situation. But I do like the pick of JJ Pegues. And if it wasn't JJ Pegues, I do think Trey Washington deserves a shout out because he would probably wear the 38 if it wasn't for JJ.
Yeah, real quick on the J.J. Pegues number, he pointed out in the press conference that his dad wore the 89 number. So he wants to honor his dad, and he wants to honor Chucky. So I admire him for doing that. Sure, it's a little bit different, but at the end of the day, it's semantics. It's just getting your roster right. So I don't think anyone will have any issues with that. A lot of people, Steven, like to wear the patch and then wear the number and then the patch. So that's something that, if you remember, Patrick Willis wore the patch because everyone that wore the 38 got injured up until he was awarded it was superstition. So he's like, I'm not wearing the number, but I will absolutely honor Chucky and wear the patch. So, but I think it is cool that he'll be wearing the 38 number. Chucky Mullins, that entire story, everything about the bust outside outside when the team runs on the field. Everyone knows how special that 1989 team was to me. In my countdown down to 4 days, actually posted the video of the 1989 Georgia Ole Miss game in which John Darnell was our featured guy today who wore number 4 days until kickoff. The throw to Reed Hines is what everybody remembers. The touchdown, Ole Miss wins 17-14. But not everybody remembers the play that set that up. It was 3rd and 8. And John Darnell, who a good friend, and he will tell you to this day, was not the most fleet of foot, but eluded a Bill Goldberg defensive tackle from the University of Georgia. And for people that are fans of the squared circle, understand that Bill Goldberg went on to fame in the into WCW and then the WWE as Goldberg, and is a world-renowned professional wrestler. Anyway, he eludes Bill Goldberg and does a little shimmy, gets out of bounds, gets the first down. A couple of plays later, the fade to Reed Hines. I don't know if he caught it. It's close.
He didn't. He didn't. Well, there's no way he caught that ball. He got credit for it. According to the record books, he did.
That official on the far side signaled touchdown, and Ole Miss beat Georgia that day in 1989. And Ray Goff had a short stint as head coach for the Georgia Bulldogs. But, yeah, it goes back to the 89 season. It was special to me. I was in the south end zone that day, and I'll never forget where I was sitting. And the Rebels win, but Chucky Mullins was part of that 89 team, and he'll forever live in Ole Miss history.
I was on the west side at about the 20-yard line. Reed Hines happened almost right in front of me.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool indeed. Anyway, Brad, thank you so much for stopping by. What do you got going on this week, man?
Yeah, excited about the season. A ton of stuff going on Saturday, a ton of podcasts coming out. Big Red and Blue Crew recruiting podcast coming with David Johnson later on the week. And then we'll have a preview podcast on the Red and Blue on the Believe in Ole Miss podcast. And then Football Friday night here in Mississippi on Friday. And then everybody's geared up for that game on Saturday.
Yeah, you're Mr. Mac South, man.
I'm enjoying that. Also a member of the very brief member of the Pat McAfee team.
Yes, congratulations. I've been wanting to congratulate
honestly, I could never appear on anything ever again. And I tell you, when that happened, that blew me. That someone sent me the link, and that was really cool. And not many times in this job do you just get it does become really cool. But that was really neat. And so just having Pat McAfee fresh off his trip to Dublin saying my name, I have to admit, I kind of geeked out.
Yeah, but at least he knows who you are. You know?
Yeah, that was really cool.
He doesn't know me from Adam, but he knows who you are. That's pretty cool. Anyway, thank you very much for stopping by, and we'll talk to you later, buddy.
Talk to you soon. Thank you.
All right. Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Coming up, we are going to look at some of the week 1 games. They are some doozies. All right. Grab a 5-hour energy shot today to stay alert and watch all your favorite games. Or if you stay up too late watching that intense overtime game, you can take a 5-hour energy shot in the morning to get you through your day. 5-Hour Energy is the brand hardworking people like you have trusted for over 20 years to give them alert, energized feelings that they need to get through a busy, hectic day. You always know where to find a 5-Hour Energy. Heck, we all know, just right next to the cash register at nearly every convenience, drug, and grocery store across the whole country. Stock up on money-saving multi-packs, though, to make sure you never run out of these delicious, energizing 5-Hour Energy shots. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that is the number 5, energy.com, and get some 5-Hour Energy product, do that today. You can use my promo code, LOCKEDONCFB, all one word, to receive 20% off your order. That offer is only valid until September 30th, only one order, and it cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good for subscription orders as well, but go to 5hourenergy.com today. Hey, Locked On Ole Miss fans, I do want to take a moment to give you a heads up on a brand new mobile game that I think you're going to love as much as I do, Ultimate College Football HC. In this amazing game and simulation, you get to step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your college football program to glory. Can you imagine being the head coach of Ole Miss? Of course you can. We do it every Saturday, from recruiting players to hiring coaches to overseeing training camps to handling scholarships. You control every crucial detail of your program. It's all in your hands. Will you be able to handle the pressure? Ultimate College Football HC is completely free. It has no ads, and it's 100% playable offline. You can play on the go as you want, when you want to play. And of course, there's a special offer for Locked On Ole Miss fans. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, all one word, inside the game store, and you'll receive a free boost on your program as well. So make sure you take advantage of this perk, as it will get your team off to a very strong start. To download the game, just visit ultimate-cfb.com, ultimate-cfb.com, or look it up on the App Store. Ultimate College Football HC. Begin your coaching legacy today. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume with all of that screaming and shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you each and every single day to bring you the biggest stories without all of that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every single day. All right, so we're going to talk about some of the other week 1 games. Again, if you're in the chat and you have a question, take part in that. Do whatever you have to ask. Play along in the picks if you want to, just to kind of make this worthwhile. But remember, if you put a comment in the chat, please put where you're from as well, so everybody can see that information. We're going to start out with this list. This is the ODU versus South Carolina. South Carolina is a 20.5-point favorite in this game. And I don't know. South Carolina's offensive line was bad, but maybe ODU is not going to be good. Maybe the transfer portal got them. There's not a whole lot I know about that game, but it's something that has me a little bit iffy at the moment. I don't know why. That 20.5-point line, that feels like it might be a little bit too much. Lenore Sellers is going to take over at South Carolina as a quarterback. It's going to be his first start. Maybe that jacks them up, but he's not Spencer Rattler. We've all seen in the NFL Spencer Rattler. So we'll see what happens. Eastern Kentucky at Mississippi State. Mississippi State's a 26.5-point favorite. Honestly, that line feels about right. Alabama's 30.5 points over Western Kentucky. TJ Finley quarterbacking Western Kentucky in that game. So we'll see exactly how it goes. Alabama should cover that fairly easily. Furman is at Ole Miss. Ole Miss is favored by 42.5 points. That's a lot of points. Anytime it gets over 40, I get nervous. Notre Dame is at Texas A&M. Texas A&M is favored by 2.5 points. Honestly, it feels about right. Alabama A&M is at Auburn. Auburn's favored by 47.5 points. To my knowledge, Hugh Freeze is still the head coach at Auburn. Southern Miss is at Kentucky. Kentucky's favored by 27.5 points. Are they 4 touchdowns better than Southern Miss? Is Southern Miss supposed to be pretty good? I do not know, but Southern can be really good and get you, or they could be in a lot of trouble. So we'll have to see what's up with there. And USC and LSU, there's no defense in that game. That last year's LSU defense and last year's USC defense was terrible. You have no idea what it's going to look like. Both of these are offensive coaches coming into the game. I just don't know about that game. I would stay away from it, honestly, because that's a freaky game. Then you got Arkansas Pine Bluff and Arkansas. Arkansas is favored by nearly 50 points. Again, once it gets over 40 points, just stay away from it. Murray State's at Missouri. They're favored by 46.5 points. Temple is at Oklahoma. They're favored by 43.5. Clemson's favored by is the underdog. Clemson is the underdog to Georgia by 13.5 points. Virginia Tech is 13.5 points up. Favorites at Vanderbilt. Chattanooga is 38.5 points at Tennessee. I kind of like Tennessee in that one. That's below that 40-point number. Texas is 33-point favorites, 33.5-point favorites over Colorado State. And Miami is at Florida. Miami is favored by 2.5 points. If Florida wins this game, Florida might be the best team in all of Florida. Really interesting stuff. So we'll see exactly what goes on. What are the games that have your attention? What are the games that you're paying attention to before I get out of here? And I do have to get out of here in the next 5-10 minutes because I kind of have a hard out tonight. But I wanted to start the live stream. It kept getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. But at 8 o'clock Eastern, I'm recording the SEC preview with the Locked On staff. We have a nice big recording coming up, so I have to get a little bit prepared for that as well. So we'll see what's up. Let's see. This one, Six String says, looks like streaming is the only way to see the Furman game. Yes, it's going to be on the ESPN app on the SEC Plus channel. Streaming only. The FCS game is always streaming in the SEC. It's a way for them to, I don't know, make a little bit of money off of something that normally TV companies do not make money off of. If that makes sense. Because they do want to force you to get to the stadium as good as they can. Kason Hottie Toddy from Hernando, Mississippi, went to Jacoby Hudson's Jamboree. He is a defensive demon. They put him at quarterback on the goal line, and he scored 2 to 3 touchdowns. He was clearly the best player on the field. Yes, Jacoby Hobson is a really good football player. And whenever I worked at Rivals.com back in the day, and they'd send me out to go record some prospect or whatever and do video, I would sit there and get to the game and not want to look at the roster at all. Not to look at the roster at all. I wanted to see the player that stood out that looked like a Division I player, because if a player on that high school field is going to Ole Miss or Alabama or as good as they need to get me to that type of game, they're going to stand out. Let's see. Ready to name players of the game. Just going into the game, I think Let's see. I think Daquan Wright is going to be the guy that flashes offensively, because he is going to play with Jaxson Dart a little bit. And he's also going to play once the second stringers come in. So he's going to get a lot of playing time potentially. I think Daquan Wright is my pick offensively. And defensively, I think this is perfectly the game of Suntarine Perkins. I think this is a Suntarine Perkins game. And I don't know if there's going to be anybody on the Furman roster that can block a player like Suntarine Perkins. That's my opinion there. What are y'all's? Who do y'all think is going to be the standouts offensively and defensively before I get out of here? And let's see. What are the week 1 games that have you the most intrigued? That Texas A&M Notre Dame game, very intrigued by that game. In College Station, I'm very intrigued by that. I'm very intrigued by West Virginia and Penn State. I've seen people predict Penn State to win that game. So we'll see what's up. Somebody says, Willis says, I think offensively, Caden Lee. That's another player that's going to play for both things. So that makes a ton of sense. And Caden Lee, if Jordan Watkins actually really is hurt, if he's actually in a point where they're going to rest him in the game, Caden Lee is going to be able to make some plays, because being in the slot, listen, there's nobody on Furman's secondary that's a returner, I think. They had to go through their version of the transfer portal to populate their secondary. Their defensive line is pretty good. Their secondary is new players all over the place, which means that's the reason I said if Ole Miss decides they want to come out and throw the football and just do that, they're going to score 100 points. So we'll see how that goes. Willis says defensively, I think there'll be 2 picks. So probably Yam Banks is the one he thinks of. Yam Banks is a good pick. I am nervous about naming anybody in the secondary because we don't know how they're going to line up and how the snaps are going to be distributed and all of that stuff. Because of all the players in the secondary, we don't know exactly how that's going to look. So that's my opinion on that. So thanks everybody for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This has been the live stream. We're going to do this every Tuesday night. We're going to do a live pregame stream. We're going to do a live instant overreaction postgame stream. And depending on the game, we might have a Sunday stream that's kind of a round table that we bring different people in, because we want as many perspectives on Ole Miss football as possible, just so it isn't just me yapping at everybody. I want as many perspectives as we can get. So that will be it. Anyway, I hope everybody had a good time. Let's get ready for kickoff. This has been a lot of fun, everybody. We'll see you later. Hotty toddy.